Hello and welcome to the Coffee and Podcast, where specialty coffee means so much more. We are on a quest to cultivate freedom for victims of human trafficking, all while drinking some really great coffee. I'm your founder, Philip Klayman, and I'm your host for the Coffee and Podcast. I want to share real quick with some of our listeners. A lot of you know that January was National Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and we always give $1 of coffee bag that we sell to safe houses that are fighting trafficking. But we actually raised that giving this past January for Human Trafficking Prevention Month to $3 per bag. And we had some other fundraisers that were going on as well. And I'm super pumped to share that we raised over $1,000 for Tharros Place, a safe house in Pooler, Georgia. So I'm really pumped. I'm really grateful for everyone that joined in some of those fundraising causes. I'm also excited to share that last year we raised over $8,000 for this cause in 2024. And so I'm just thrilled. I'm pumped. It's so exciting to see how we can continue to make a difference. And it's really because we have customers and staff and people who believe in this. So thank you so much. Now, joining us today is going to be David Gamboa, who's the communications director for Elijah Rising, a nonprofit dedicated to ending human trafficking in Houston, Texas. Through prayer, awareness, intervention, and restoration, they are pursuing multiple solutions for a lasting impact. Last episode, we had Kate Templeton on, who was with Tharros Place, and she shared about going to the schools and going to places to make sure that youth know about this issue to prevent them from getting caught up in situations like trafficking. Today, I think we're going to learn about some different approaches and some unique approaches, one of them being van tours. This was wild when I first heard about it. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot about that and more about Elijah Rising. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you on. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so my name is David Gamboa. I've born and raised in Texas, right here in Houston, and I used to be a young adult pastor for a number of years before I learned about human trafficking and how prevalent it was in my city. And the things that I saw were just completely shocking when I first became aware of trafficking and it happening here. And I just jumped in. I brought my young adults with me. We kind of did this whole journey together of learning and engaging through prayer and awareness and doing outreaches. And it was just a real formative time for me. And over time, I just began to feel like this is something I want to give my life to, and enter Elijah Rising, the organization that I'm going to be sharing about today. But I was a volunteer and quickly jumped into this group that was very much just kind of a small grassroots organization that used to just be a prayer meeting. That was really the only goal that they set out to do, was just to have these prayer meetings against human trafficking. And over time, it grew, the influence grew, the impact grew, and the need, quite frankly, is just so great. And so we've been on a journey over the past 12 years of just figuring out how to engage the community in awareness, but also provide tangible, direct services to women who are leaving the life of trafficking.
And Elijah Rising seems to have its hand in a lot of pots. I mean, I'll do a lot of the different components in terms of awareness and restorative care. And you'll have a safe house, I believe, correct? You'll have a safe house?
Yeah, we have a safe home.
Yeah. So how many people are a part of the organization? I guess, how much have you seen it grown over the years that you've been there? I imagine there needs to be a decent amount of people to run an organization that's addressing it in so many different ways.
Yeah, so back in the day, it was 3 to 6 staff members. Now we have a full team of 25 people. A majority of that team is dedicated to the safe home. So we operate 24/7, nights and weekends. We have a psychologist on staff. We have recovery staff who helps with addiction services and stuff like that. And we have case managers who are taking girls to doctor's appointments and helping them fight, legal battles, and just helping them get on the right foot again and rebuild their life. And it's a year to 2 year program. And so we have definitely grown over the years from just kind of this small group of, I would say we were a lot of young people that are, really passionate and really, wanted to make a difference. And over time, we've learned, okay, here are the resources we need. Here's how to do this well. And so it hasn't always been easy. We haven't been perfect, but it's been really, really incredible to just see the impact growing. And yeah, the team members I work with are absolutely incredible.
Mm. And about how many people on average do you have in the safe house at a time, about, or a range of how many?
Yeah, so in our safe home, it's up to six at a time. And we're also about to open a transitional home. So that's kind of less staff oversight, more of kind of like a bridge between independent living and being in a full program. And so we're actually closing on a property pretty soon here, a transitional home here in Houston. And so that's going to be able to house 10 women. Um,
Wow,
so,
great.
yeah.
Okay. And then how many years have you been with Elijah Rising?
So I've been with Elijah Rising for 8 years, and my main role is in marketing. But of course, in nonprofits, you have your hat in everything. So I've done everything from leading our van tours that drive people around and show them trafficking in the city, to leading outreach teams, to helping build out systems and procedures within the programs. So I've done a little bit of everything.
Nice. Yeah. Uh, Wearing multiple hats in the nonprofit and ministry world, I can definitely understand that.
Yeah,
And then, I guess one question I have is that's pretty amazing to hear that this just started out as a prayer gathering, and then it's
yeah,
become something so much more and so much bigger. And y'all really are involved in a lot of different ways. I mean, what's one? And you've been there for 8 years. I feel like you've seen a lot of this transformation of it becoming small, right, to something bigger. What is one of the contributing factors that you see to what took it there? Is there some mindset? Is there some characteristic? Is there some organizational structure? What's something that you think really helped bring this to something bigger?
yeah. I really believe prayer. It's the foundation of our ministry, our organization. We meet every morning for prayer at 9 a.m. And it's just a time for us because this work is heavy. I'm not going to lie. It's not a easy job, and it's a very much a new field. So there's no textbook on how to do these types of things. So a lot of the programs we're putting in place, we're pioneering or we're learning from other people who have pioneered in this space. And so I find that just coming back to that place of prayer has kept us going. And I have so many stories. We're actually working on a book to tell a lot of the stories. But whenever I've just noticed this, whenever we face something that was like, man, this is going to take us out, this is going to be the end. We're not going to have enough funding. It's just like something comes through in the last second. And so our team has learned, hey, when things get really tough, it's almost like an indicator to us of like, hey, breakthrough is right around the corner. And so I think, maybe that resilience, maybe that faith that belief has played such an integral role into us keep going and not giving up.
Mm, wow. Well, and let's hang on that for a second, because that's clearly, I mean, it's one of the four elements that y'all really highlight. And what are you doing to fight this is prayer. And so clearly, I know y'all are believers. We've spoken before this podcast, and uh, I know that clearly some of the people you're trying to get engaged in this as Christians. So I guess
Yeah.
my question is, especially with this being, like you said, kind of a newer. It's not that it's new. Maybe it's getting more attention than it has ever before.
Yeah.
How easy or not easy has it been to get the church engaged? Have Christians been stepping up? Has the church, as more of an organizational setting, been stepping up? What's been your observation there?
I mean, I think, it's a challenge because it's definitely out there. Not everyone is going to say, hey, sign me up to go reach women in a brothel. Most people are like, I didn't even know there were brothels. I mean, it's just not on their radar. And so there's also like a fear component of like, well, if I get involved, are people going to, start tracking me and, trying to prevent me from helping people that they're trafficking. So there is a lot of fear. There's a lot of just kind of, and quite frankly, the success doesn't happen overnight. I think a lot of times in churches and in missions, I hate to say it, but you like to see the numbers. You like to see the big numbers of like, we helped, thousands of people. And what I found in this line of work is we're really walking with people uh, a year, 2 years, 6 years, maybe even a lifetime. We're walking with them through this healing journey. That's not just like a one and done type moment. It's like, okay, we help you out. Well, now we got to walk with you through life, because of the trauma that maybe you experienced as a child, and that's all you've ever known. There's a lot of things you need to work through and process, and so but we have seen a lot of churches engage with us, invite us to share on Sundays. I think that's one of the most powerful things when we get in front of a whole congregation and like the pastor's not afraid to talk about like what's going on with OnlyFans, what's going on with trafficking in their community. I mean, people want to know. And so when we have these conversations, I've seen so much fruit from that. And if you're a pastor listening, I would encourage you, hey, engage these conversations, because the world is having these conversations. And I believe as the church, we need to too. It's just such a massive part of our culture right now is trafficking, the hypersexualization of culture. We need to be aware of it, and we need to speak out.
Hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and I agree. It's interesting. Being a Christian myself, prayer is so vital to this, right? I mean, it's this concept of ending human trafficking. We say it a lot, and we've actually gotten some flack before for it, because it's like, well, you can't do that, right? And our response is, well, we'd rather dream big. We'd rather
Yeah,
dream big than not, right? Because if we don't have hope and if we don't have faith, what else do we have, right? We have to believe that there's going to be some end to this, and there will be some end to this.
absolutely.
But that really points to the power of prayer being a component of this, that I feel like is honestly frequently not talked about a lot, because, like you said, we like numbers, we like measurement, and it's hard to gauge what sort of effect does that have. But I think that's neat that your organization really puts that as a component of this is important, and we're going to commit to it, as you've said, regularly meeting. I just think that's really neat. So
Yeah.
then let's dive right into van tours, because I really do think that is another very unique component of something y'all do. I've never heard of anyone doing something like this. So let me tell you what I think it sounds like.
Yeah.
From reading the website, it
Good.
sounds like people sign up to get on a van, and they are actually being driven around the city to see the places, and not like literally, but kind of more of passing by the specific problems that are happening when it comes to trafficking in the city. Is that correct? And just tell us everything you got about the van tours.
Yeah. So, I mean, the kind of premise for the van tours was like, I think a lot of people think when we're talking about human trafficking that we're sensationalizing things. And while there has been absolutely some of the sensationalization happening, like with the Wayfair stuff and all of that, quite frankly, we were seeing what was happening in Houston, telling people, and they were just like, "No way, there's no way that's happened. There's no way it's as bad as you guys say it is." And so, just kind of the initial knee jerk reaction is like, "Well, let me drive you and show you." And so that's what we began to do, is just drive people and show them and tell them the stories. Hey, we did an outreach in this place, and let me tell you, how these girls, how they told us how they ended up here and what's going on. And here's what the online ads are saying as men go in and purchase women. Here's what they're writing about the women, about how they're abusing them, the things that they're saying to them, every detail, how they're cataloging their ethnicity, their body size. I mean, all of it. And we're just presenting the data to people and in the van tour. And it's, people have always said, this is a real kick in the gut, because the stories are gut wrenching, but then it's like when you actually physically see the location, you see, you know, guys lining up and going in. It's like, okay, this is now, it's real. Now I'm seeing it. Now I have to do something. And so, way back in the day, I mean, we used to do van tours all over the city. So Houston is not like we have like one red light district. It's like we have no zoning laws, so brothels can open up in neighborhoods or in strip centers, in everywhere. And we're a very diverse community. So we have different venues where trafficking looks different. So we have the Latin American cantina bars where trafficking looks one way and it looks different than the illicit massage parlors. And then we have truck stops where that is a completely different model and different, you know, women being trafficked there. And then we also have strip clubs, which a lot of people don't know or think about trafficking happening in strip clubs, but absolutely, we have several cases here in Houston that have been in the news that have shown women being brought from Central and South America to work in the strip club. So we show people the landscape, and it's really educational. And we really, you know, try not to. We don't go to the places where prostitution is happening out in the street. I think that's a lot of the pushback we get. The negative feedback is like, well, you are just going out and pointing a finger at people that are prostitutes. We don't do that. We actually do the research. We go to law enforcement and say, hey, are these places on you guys' radar? And, you know, they're like, yeah. And then we present all the data to the people that are going to the van tour. And it's like, hey, you know, you can come to your conclusion about this place, but based on all these factors, you know, we have a strong suspicion that prostitution is happening here, and therefore how women are brought into prostitution, whether forced fraud or coercion or a minor, you know, then you have trafficking. And one of the, I guess I could share a success story from the van tour was, if you're familiar with Houston, there's an area called the Galleria. We have like a huge Galleria Mall. It's kind of a nicer area, but it's also the highest concentration of brothels. And so whenever you would drive down 59, like the main highway, you would just see like adult studio. You know, they're just not hiding it. It's out there. And so we would do our van tour just kind of around the block. And there was a swingers club, there was an adult studio, there was multiple massage parlors, there was a makeshift abortion clinic that was being used illegally for the women there. And so we were driving people just around this block, showing them. And we used to point out the landowners of the different establishments. And so one of the spas was called Angela Day Spa. And so we mentioned the landowner, and someone on the van tour was like, I just had dinner with that guy last night. And so we were like, well, put us in contact with him because we need to make him aware of some things. And it just kind of so happened that Texas Monthly, which is a huge publication here in Texas, they did an entire story that showed this girl's entire trafficking journey. I mean, you can look it up online. It's called The Lost Girls by Mimi Schwartz. It's one of the best written pieces on trafficking that I've ever read. But it shows her journey from Thailand into Houston, being trafficked in this place called Angela Day Spa, which is on our van tour, and kind of her process out of that trafficking situation, how hard it was for her to verbalize what had happened to her, to make sense of any. You even see law enforcement kind of struggling to piece together the trafficking narrative and how this crime ring operated. Well, this landowner, I mean, he was leasing to these people, and he was receiving twice the amount of rent and was being paid cash every month, and was involved, you know, with, you know, he was a churchgoer. And so
Wow.
just kind of turned a blind eye. And so we went through this whole ordeal where, you know, he tried to sue us, and eventually we got a recording of him saying, you know, he knew it was going on. And so he actually had a big change of heart and began to engage in a lot of conversations with us. And he eventually was like, okay, we're going to, you know, kick these people out. And we were like, well, let us office in that space, Angela Day Spa. And so that became our very first office. And so you could imagine, you know, it's this really dark place. When you walk in, there's no windows. There's absolutely just darkness. And when you walk in, there was just an open window, and that's where the girls would come out, and guys would look at the girls. They'd be in lingerie, and they'd choose which one. And so we were just looking through this room, and they had a little workroom where they had hung these plywood sheets along the walls, just like with a chain and a plywood sheet, and that's where people were sleeping on these like makeshift bunk beds. And then if you go further back, they had to the right, they had these shower rooms. And so before clients would come in, or before sex buyers would come in, they would make them take a shower to be sure they weren't law enforcement, so there's no, microphone or anything tapped. And so, they would do that, and then they'd have different rooms in the back, and it was just, dirty, and the smell was terrible. Just a real dark, heavy place. You feel it when you walked in. And so we decided we were going to office in there, but we didn't want people to miss out on that experience of seeing like the darkness of like what this actually looks like. And so at that location, we were like, well, let's turn it into a museum. Let's preserve some of these things, and let's show people what's actually going on behind the scenes. And so we built out each room to be kind of different facets of human trafficking in our city. And we did a lot of casework. Like, we went to the border and got a bunch of evidence from private security that was working in the Texas Mexico border of how women are smuggled. And so like we had, videos of girls being smuggled across. We had this massive tree where the girls would be literally handcuffed to. We're showing pictures, and we recreated that. So it was very dark, but at the same time, people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is going on," when they came through the museum. And it was so impactful that even law enforcement, the vice captain at the time, would bring his uh, officers through it to show them, hey, this is what trafficking looks like. Here's the things you need to be looking out for, because we recreated a lot of the rooms and stuff that had been in previous trafficking cases here in Houston. And so that was kind of like a thing that we continued to do, was bring people on the van tours, and then we would tell the story of Angela's Day Spa, and they'd get to walk through and actually see it. And it was just a really powerful, impactful experience. And one time we even had a survivor who had been trafficked in one of the cantinas, and this cantina was just terrible. It had 17 rooms built out of plywood in the top story. I mean, it's something from like it's just unimaginable what was happening in this place. Children being sold for $500 an hour. So we recreated one of those rooms in the museum, and a girl came in there, and she was like, I was in that brothel, and I thought no one cared about what happened to me. I thought no one would know. And she's like, standing here is like healing for me, because I'm like, you guys are seeing, and people are being made aware. And so that was a really powerful moment. And then as we began to do more outreach, I mean, so many girls were calling us like, hey, can you get me help? I need help housing. And we just had nothing. And so we began to look into how we can meet those needs. And as that kind of need arose, we began to pursue other properties, and moved out of that office just because, and it was just full of mold. Like it was so bad. Everyone, you'd get a headache just walking in there, and we were like, we can't office in here anymore. And so that's why we moved out, and the museum, got closed down, because we just haven't found a space that we could build that in. Our kind of direct care services took a big priority for us. And so hopefully one day, we would have a space that we could do something like that again. But it was really powerful, that season.
Wow. I think this is very powerful. And, as I consider what does it take to get more people involved? Well, how can they get involved unless they know? Right. And how can people really know unless they see?
Yeah.
And you and I actually were swapping some stories prior to the recording about how that's how my wife and I got involved. We actually saw it, right? I mean, like, it was like we are meeting someone in a place where this is their life, and it hits different, right? And so I think y'all's approach is, honestly, it's wild, it's audacious, and I think it's so necessary, because I think there's a growing sentiment of people that want to get involved, and I just don't know what to do. And there's still plenty that I would say that group can engage in with giving, and there's lots of ways to participate, but I would say it's maybe participating from a distance, right? Either because, like you said, I'm scared, or I don't know, or there's all these barriers to maybe getting a step closer to more engaged action, right?
Yeah.
And what a powerful way to help people take that step.
Yeah.
Join us, come with us, let's go see what types of things are happening together, and we will help you with it, we'll teach you about it. I think it's filling a really important gap here, because I feel like everyone I meet is either they've been working in a safe house for the past 10 years and this has been their life's work and passion, or they know this is a problem and they wish there was something they could do. And what a powerful way to bring those together through things like the museum, even though it's not happening anymore, but also the van tours. I think it's really powerful and really amazing. How many van tours do you do? How many vans do you have? Is there a tour guide? Is there a recording? Help us understand a little bit more about the actual,
Yeah.
how it's running.
So most of the van tours are volunteer ran, and we pair people up. So we have teams of van tour facilitators. So you have a driver, and then you have someone who, we prepare a script and all the research, and then we invite them to go on outreach with us, because we're like, this also needs to be your personal experience of what you've seen. And so many of our van tour leaders have been with us on outreach, so they're going into the clubs, they're going into the brothels, and they're seeing it. And so we train people on how to run the van tour. So currently we have two routes. We have one that takes place in Houston, kind of central, and then we have one in Spring, which is kind of North Houston. And so they're different routes and different leaders. And so the interesting thing about van tours is we've never marketed them. They've always been booked like 3 months in advance. And
Wow.
we always put the emphasis on people, hey, if you're going to sign up for a van tour, bring 12 people with you. And every time people rise to that challenge, and they bring people with them. And so we're doing like 3, 4, 5 a week sometimes. We have, and it ranges from like people that are in the medical field, nurses that, as part of their training. We've done law enforcement. We just did one for a couple of city council members, and to them it was very eye opening, and they've been having conversations with us about, what ordinances do we need to revise. And we've done van tours for like schools, so they'll like rent a charter bus, which is crazy, taking all these kids on a charter bus to expose them. But we tell them, hey, you guys are the ones that are being targeted. If you're 16, 17, 18 years old, that's who traffickers are looking for. They're not looking for the 25 or 30-year-old. They're looking for younger and younger and younger. And so we have schools that do it every year with us. We have a lot of colleges that are beginning to have kind of courses that are geared towards trafficking, especially in the criminal justice field. And so a lot of teachers have like made it a requirement that they go on the van tour. So we stay pretty busy doing them, and it's a long tour. It's probably like 2 hours. So
Wow.
it's really intensive, and it covers, on our Houston route, we have a residential brothel that's just like in a home, and we have a massage parlor, truck stop, cantina, strip club. And I tell people, we've never gotten any pushback from any of the businesses. And this
Why do
is,
you think that is?
I think it's because they don't want the attention. They don't want people to know what is happening there. And if there was any legitimacy to what they were doing, um, I believe they would come have a conversation with us, and we would be able to talk and come to a conclusion like, hey, okay, nothing's happening. at your business, right? I mean, if you guys own a coffee shop, if someone was driving around in a van saying all these negative things about your coffee business and showing you what people are saying about it online, I'm sure it would be like a big concern to you. And that's not the case with these places, and a lot of times they will get shut down by law enforcement. And I think that's a common question we get a lot, is like, well, if you guys know where this is, why doesn't law enforcement? They do. It just takes them some time to build investigations. So it's not all happening, super quick.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure I understand this correctly, because I would imagine these traffickers to push back against awareness about this issue and it being posed as an issue. But you're saying that they don't give pushback. I'm still struggling to understand that. Why would they not? Why would they be okay with something like this if they know about it?
Yeah, I think there's a real fear of being caught, and so I don't think they want attention. They don't want to. They don't want conflict. That's when we go do outreach. I mean, no one really wants to, engage. I mean, we don't go in an antagonistic way. That's never our heart. Even if anyone wants to have a conversation, we'd totally be up to having a conversation with them. But they just don't want the attention. They don't want to engage with it. Just keep operations happening as usual. The other suspicion I have is that a lot of these are kind of like rings. So the actual kind of head guy is not even there. There's a bunch of people kind of under him managing things, and they really don't have much of a say.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that makes sense, right? Not one to bring attention to it. Um, but boy, how powerful in just this short conversation. I think what I'm once again just so amazed by with a model like this. I mean, it is unique. I don't know of anyone else doing something like this, really taking you to the spots and saying this is what it looks like, this is what's happening, which is eye-opening because a lot of times it doesn't look the way you think, right? It's
Yeah.
like you've said, massage parlors and a cantina, and these could be places that people just go to, not even knowing maybe some of the deeper things going on. Maybe they do. But just what's so amazing to me is like, look at all the people coming to the table or coming to the van. Law enforcement, medical, you mentioned city officials, and a landlord. And didn't start pretty, but it ended beautiful in a way. So how amazing that it's gotten that much attention to really bring different people to the table to address this. Because I've talked with many people on this podcast about how they wish law enforcement were more involved in their city, how they wish we need more people in the medical community to be aware of this, to spot it at that point, right? It just seems really neat that y'all seem to have created a lot of connectedness and connected communication around this among multiple stakeholders. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, and I think it differs from a presentation where it's like you might have 100 people in a room. It's like you're 12 people in a van and for an hour, and so and anyone can ask questions, and I just think that's really impactful, and I wish we could do more people. Like I wish it was 50 people at a time, because uh, trying to reach the entire city of Houston just 12 people at a time, that's a pretty audacious goal. But I think the impact of it. I mean, people. I talk with people that are like, I went on a venture 10 years ago and it changed my life.
Hmm.
It caused us to adopt. I mean, I hear stories like that all the time. So it's a lot of work. It's a high quality. We put a lot of research. Like our poor awareness director, she has to go online, and I mean, this is the part that doesn't get talked about, is the research that we have to do into showing that these places have prostitution and show signs of trafficking, because we're going online. I mean, we're reading some of the worst. I mean, guys who go there, who purchase the women, they publish like these 10 paragraph long accounts of what happened and what went down. And, it's just heartbreaking to see that.
Hmm.
And especially when you've done outreach and you know the girl and you see what's being written about them online. It's just it's really really a hard part of doing this.
Mm. I'm sure it's incredibly heavy for the participants. How much more heavy Is it for the facilitators who have to see this regularly, like you said, do the research? But man, what an impact! And you even said like what? So multiple 4 to 5 van tours every week, and you're booked 3 months out. That's traction. That's attention, and that's a good thing. That's good mobilization.
Yeah.
Um, let's shift gears. Unless if you have anything else to share about the van tours, I'm all ears. But want to shift gears a tiny bit and talk about the podcast. So y'all have a podcast. Another way that I imagine y'all are wanting to raise awareness. That's one of the reasons we started this one. So tell us a little bit about that journey. Why a podcast? How did you get into that? Is it working the way you think? What's that journey been like?
Yeah, so in 2020, we had to put the van tours on pause because no one wanted to be in a van with 12 people at that time, and so we got the idea of, well, let's start a podcast, and so we started doing that, and we've been doing it ever since. Our goal is to really our goal was first to answer like kind of the frequently asked questions, and so that was how we started out. And then over time, it's began a great way for us to engage with our partners and like colleagues in this work, to invite them on our podcast. And that's been really fun. And then the other piece is just interviewing survivors, having them share their stories, the books they're writing. We really want to make it accessible to the public to do a deep dive on certain topics. But also, I've realized, people in the anti-trafficking field that are providing, the actual direct care services, the programming. A lot of times they're interested into how we operate or what has worked for us and what hasn't worked for people. And so that's been really, really great, to just kind of add conversation to that topic, and also blending unique communities like in Houston, the recovery community was not really um, co- in collaboration with the anti-trafficking, but a lot of people in addiction recovery stuff had been trafficked. And so we had this beautiful kind of merging of our worlds where, they're coming in and teaching us about addiction, and we're coming in and teaching them about trafficking. And so we've had people from that community on our podcast, and that's been really, really fascinating. Because I grew up in the church, so I know nothing about like drugs or anything like that, and it's been really, really interesting to see how big of a role that actually plays in trafficking and keeping women, um, trapped in this life. And so that's been, a big win for us on the podcast.
Kind of building those inter-network communications. So maybe not as much about awareness, at least the outcome, but more about partnership, connection. Once again, bringing those stakeholders together and working with one another.
Yeah.
Um, really neat. My next question is, this is it's clearly a very difficult thing to live in and to work in for 8 years for you, right? And many people have been working in this for a while. What's one of the greatest challenges you've seen in your role at Elijah Rising with your time there?
Yeah. In I will say, it's a long term. Uh, it's really not about what you can do. It's about how long you can last in this type of work. And I know it's very hard to keep staff in these types of roles. It's challenging, and so that's the biggest challenge, is finding people that really feel like this is just a calling and not, like a career. That's definitely what's brought me back to the table. Is like, I very, and for people of faith, we believe that, God kind of orchestrates our steps, and he has plans and purposes for us. And so very early on in this, I had an experience where I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life. And things have just kind of fallen into place. Like I've tried to get other jobs several times, and immediately they all fall through. And it was particularly a really challenging time. We thought the ministry was done, and I ended up sticking it out and learned a ton and grew, and was actually one of probably the best learning experiences of my life, going through that kind of hardship and challenge. And so that's definitely a challenge, is having people that are going to stick it out and um, believe that, there are some solutions out there. Even though it feels like we're kind of, plucking water out with a little cup out of a sinking ship. There's good things taking place. There's a lot happening, and I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of the positive change that is happening. And so but that's the big challenge I see.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's, I think sometimes it's good to get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And y'all have been, you don't, as you said, you don't stay in this because it's comfortable or it's a good career or things like that. It's uncomfortable. I imagine it's stressful. We've heard about we heard about lawsuit that you shared earlier,
Yeah.
and funding, and let alone just the emotional and the mental drain of the work that you're doing. But I think it's almost a call to action too, hearing from you and seeing what you and Elijah Rising are doing. I think it's a challenge to me and to our listeners is, are we willing to get a little uncomfortable? Yeah. Van tours are probably going to be uncomfortable. A sex trafficking museum, probably pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think we need to maybe get a little uncomfortable to learn what's actually happening so that we can really start to address it and not pursue comfort, but to pursue breakthrough. And I think that's just a great challenge that you've brought, maybe without even verbalizing it, that I think is good for us to hear. So I'll let you have the final word. What's one piece of advice or resource that you would just encourage any listeners with? What's the last thing you want to share?
Yeah, well, as you were saying that, a quote came to mind by a abolitionist. I forget her name, but she said, "The justice of our cause is the surety of our success." And so, as long as you're pursuing justice, as long as you're pursuing truth, at the end of the day, the enemy might win. Darkness might, seem like it has the upper hand, but in the end, success is going to be guaranteed for those who stand for justice and truth. And so, that's how I feel about trafficking. People can argue about it all day, but as long as we stand up for what's right, I believe people are going to be awakened to this issue, and we're going to see change happen. The only thing I could encourage people to check out is our website, elijahrising.org. We have like a web version of our museum on there, so if that kind of piqued your interest, you could go through that. And it's kind of designed like an Instagram story, or you can go on our Instagram and see a lot of the content there at Elijah Rising. But wherever you are, if you're not in Houston, if you're in a different city, I would just encourage you, get to know the organizations that are there. They probably need some encouragement. So if you don't have time to volunteer, maybe show up and be like, hey, how can let me bring everyone coffee drinks. Let me bring the staff coffee drink. That's so huge for us, just connecting. Let me introduce myself, start there and just begin to serve an organization and get involved. And I always say, once you start doing that, once you give your yes, it's like things start happening. And all these, I could go on and on about stories, and I want that for you. I want you to experience the amazing stories of just overcoming human trafficking. And all it takes is for you to just take that first step of initiative. And so I'd encourage, your listeners, anyone listening to this podcast, to do that sometime this month.
Great. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Philip, for having me, and Elijah Rising, and I'm glad you found us.
Yeah, well, y'all are doing incredible work. I strongly encourage our listeners to follow through on some of that. We'll put some of these links in the show notes. Check out Elijah Rising, check out their podcast, check out their online museum. Maybe we need to get a little more uncomfortable. Maybe we need to start learning more about this. And I encourage you to do that. Listeners, as always, thank you so much for joining us in this, for paying attention, and for wanting to get involved. And as always, thank you for helping us cultivate freedom.